On today's show, the Nets rookie class has remained polarizing throughout this season. I'll tell you why fans should be happy with the early returns of the group on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. And on today's episode, it's part 2 of Fan Take Friday. I took questions and takes from listeners on a wide range of subjects, and it was another jam-packed mailbag. So thank you to all of you who continue to submit questions. But on this part 2, getting into the Nets rookies, how do we feel about their class? How do we feel about the roster overall? What have we seen from some of these players, and how should Nets fans feel about their future outlooks with the team? Also, some 2026 draft class. Getting right into it, first question, are you happy with the Nets draft picks, or would you have wanted them to select other players with any of their picks from what you've seen up until now? That's from Tanny G. And my overall assessment of this Nets rookie class, obviously, historic class, 5 first-round picks, never happened before. For the most part, I would say that Nets fans should be happy, despite some polarizing views, despite the carryover of all the people that dunked on the Nets after they made this draft class, which was very polarizing. There are those takes that have persisted. People just still try to clown on them. I think if you've actually watched the Nets throughout this season, you should be happy, I think, with this draft class, and at least encouraged, because you look at it, the Nets made 5 first-round picks. And what was the strategy behind that when they were making those picks? It was volume shooting. It was dart throws. It was seeing, can we get a few of these guys to hit? We're going to throw as much what at the wall as we can and see what sticks. And with that, 5 first-round picks. I mean, if 2 of these guys can turn into rotation caliber players, potentially starters, that's a big win. If 3 of them can, then you're really cooking. You look at it, these 5 first-round picks, I mean, if you're going to break them up into tiers right now, I would say you have Yegor Diomed, who has definitely exceeded expectations. I would also put Nolan Schroeder in that group of at least meeting expectations. And then you have the guys like Drake Powell and Danny Wolf, who have had ups and downs, but I think have looked encouraging for extended stretches. And Ben Suraf has struggled. We'll see, what ends up happening with him. But I think that you have 2 guys in Yegor Diomed and Nolan Schroeder who I would be confident right now can at least be something in a rotation. Yegor, I think, has a decent chance to be a starter, an impactful starter. Nolan, maybe he can be a starter. Maybe he's a reserve, but I feel pretty good about those guys based on what they've shown and the skills that they've been able to bring to the table. And then the last 3, I mean, you have guys, like I said, like Danny Wolf has had really encouraging stretches. Drake Powell also, they're very raw, but they've had encouraging stretches. Ben Suraf, I think that he has interesting tools. We'll see what he can develop into. But I think that based on the way that this draft class has looked during the rookie season, I think that there's a good chance that they could get 2 or 3 contributors out of this class. And I think that that is a big win. And if you're saying, going into the draft, the Nets are going to be able to potentially find, 2, maybe 3 rotation players, I definitely think that that is a good outcome. So that's why I think fans should be happy with what they've seen from this rookie class so far. Now, bring it out to the whole team. If you had to make a report card for the players on this team, basically each player with their expectations entering the year, what grade would you give each player for the season? That's from Tanny G. I'm not going to go through the whole roster and give grades on every guy. And I don't need to talk about the rookies because you just talked about the rookies. But if you look at the rest of the guys on the roster, guys who I think have exceeded expectations, definitely Michael Porter Jr., I think exceeded expectations during the first half of the season. We'll see if kind of the fruit that the Nets are able to bear for that is via the trade market or it's via MPJ moving forward with this team. I talked about that on part 1, but I think he's exceeded expectations. I think that Day'Ron Sharpe has had another good year. I think that he looks like a guy who is definitely going to be a rotation player moving forward. Noah Clowney, I wouldn't say he's exceeded expectations, but I'd say that he has looked encouraging for a very extended stretch, in the middle of the season. I think that he looked really good. And despite some of the struggles as of late, I think that you can feel pretty decent about his trend line. I did an episode about that yesterday, or that might have been Thursday or Wednesday. Go check that out. But those guys, I'd say that you feel good about. And then the rest of the guys like Nick Claxton, it's been up and down. Like, he looked really good offensively to start the season. He's kind of tapered off. And with Clax, I think that's some of the limitations that he has. Like, I still think that he's a valuable player. I definitely think that he's a rotation caliber player. Is he a guy that can be your starting center? I think that there's definitely questions about that. And a lot of that is due to the defensive rebounding, the physicality, the way that he kind of matches up with some of these more physically imposing center, which the number of those guys in the league is growing. And you look at it like, with the limitations that Nick has as a defensive rebounder, as being able to hold up against some of those more physical centers, some of the things that he's really going to need to do to, kind of really make up for that would be, especially offensively, he's going to have to be a really high-level rim finisher and a really high-level scorer around the basket. And, a lot of that's due to the fact that he's not very versatile offensively in terms of not being an outside shooter, not being a guy that's necessarily a ball handler. Like, he can drive it a little bit, but not in the traditional sense of ball handler. So with that, Nick needs to do some of those things well. And I think that the rim finishing, it looked really encouraging early in the season. It's tapered off as of late, and it's gotten back to like maybe slightly above average. And given Nick's limitations as a defensive rebounder, as covering some of these more physical centers, slightly above average offensively as a finisher, that's not going to cut it. So definitely think there's questions about Claxton moving forward. The only other guys you'd really talk about outside of those guys are Terrence Mann, Zaire Williams. Terrence, I think, has been fine. Like, I think he's been a really good vet for this team. So I think that you can be happy with him. The Nets are going to have him probably for at least one more season, given his contract situation. I think he's been fine. And then Zaire Williams, I think that he's looked really good defensively for extended stretches. I think the offense continues to leave a lot to be desired. So I wouldn't mind them giving him, another shot or another look next season. But the prospect of him being like a real long-term rotation contributor, I think that's in question. Maybe he can be an end of the rotation guy, but, we'll see. I do think that there are, some interesting things with some of those guys that I've talked about. Give a date/game prediction for when the Nets shut down veterans, MPJ, Claxton, and Mann specifically. That's from Mike NYY. And yeah, I talked about this on my podcast on Friday after the Nets lost their 10th straight game. And I was talking about how, the Nets still have their work cut out for them in regard to the tank race. And if you look at it, the Nets have the next, they're on a 10-game losing streak right now. Their next games, they still have an upcoming difficult stretch of games. They have Detroit, Memphis, Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Portland, OKC, New York. Those are all difficult games outside of Memphis. So I wouldn't expect them to shut guys down before that. But then after that, you get to Sacramento. They play Sacramento on March 22nd, which is going to be a huge game because the Kings are only 1.5 games ahead of the Nets in the draft lottery standings for the number one spot right now. And then after Sacramento, you have a few more difficult games. You have Portland, Golden State, Los Angeles. So maybe the Nets don't completely shut guys down for that first Sacramento matchup. But after that, March 29th, that's the date where I would expect the Nets to definitely have some of the veterans shut down by then at the latest. You look at it, their last stretch of the season, they have Sacramento for the second time on March 29th. It's Sacramento, Charlotte, Atlanta, Washington, Milwaukee, Indiana, Milwaukee, Toronto. So that's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 of their last 8 games are against bad, or potentially tanking teams. So that's the point where I think you really have nothing to gain from playing guys at that point. And if you look at how the Nets operated last season, Cam Johnson, the date that they shut Cam Johnson down last season, which was March 29th. So it really lines up. I mean, that second Kings game on March 29th, that's the date where the rest of the schedule, 5 out of those remaining 8 games are against bad or tanking teams. That's the point where I would definitely say that the Nets would probably have guys shut down by, or at least they should. Next question, along with that, or just a statement. Danny Wolf needs more playing time. That's from Net Sage. And yes, Danny played 14 minutes in the Nets last game against the Heat. They played a lot of their starters, big minutes. Michael Porter Jr. played 35. I do think that Danny Wolf should be getting more playing time. I don't think that the Nets are on a losing streak right now, a 10-game losing streak, their longest in 4 years. They're obviously trying to win, but yeah, I do think the rookie should be getting more playing time. Last couple before a break, tank idea. Get rid of the lottery altogether. Teams would not have to worry about maximizing their floor. Once a team tanks, they are most likely to get a top pick and hopefully won't tank next year. And you get rid of the conspiracy theories of certain teams getting top picks. That's from Bronx Main Event. And yeah, like the tank thing, the draft lottery format, it's been belabored to death at this point. Adam Silver actually had some comments today where he said that the Nets are going to have serious changes to the draft lottery format this offseason. And the idea of getting rid of the lottery altogether, I mean, I don't hate it, honestly, because like if you're trying to dissuade tanking, we've seen the way that the NBA has tried to do it the last few years, they went the other direction. They flattened the lottery odds. They made it, they thought that making it more difficult to get the best odds of getting a top pick would dissuade tanking. And we've seen that's false. It's just not true. And, some people go even further the other direction, and they say just get flatten the odds altogether. All 14 lottery teams have the same odds. I think that that's a terrible idea, because what I've said is the draft is for these small market teams. It's for these teams who are trying to get better, and these small market teams are trying to get better, that are never going to be on the star trade list for, these star guys who ask out or big ticket free agents. And you look at that, I mean, they need the draft to get better. So making it more difficult for those teams to get top picks, we've seen how that's worked out these last few years, and it hasn't done anything to prevent them from tanking. Next question before a break, not a team question, but can you give us a bit of a day in the life as a Nets beat reporter? I'm sure plenty of people are curious to hear what it's like having your job. That's from Ms. And yeah, my day in the life as a Nets beat reporter, I obviously have the writing gig. I write for Clutch Points as a Nets beat writer. And then I have this podcast, and doing daily shows has become a much bigger part of my life. So it's taken, honestly, the majority of my time has gone to making these shows, which I've had a really good time doing. But a day in the life as a Nets beat reporter, it depends if there's practice, if there's a game, but a lot of it is about obviously keeping your ear to the floor, talking to people around the organization, talking to people around the NBA, watching the Nets, live during their games, rewatching their games so you understand completely what's going on. And I luckily have access to some good resources to be able to do that. So it's a lot of watching the NBA. It's a lot of talking to people around the NBA. And it's also, going to all the games, going to the practices, talking to people around the team, being around the team, kind of just being around there to soak it all in. So that's really the day in the life. It's, going to the games, going to the practices, talking to people in and around the NBA and the team at those events, also just on your own time, forming, networking, forming connections, building kind of a network, people you can get information from, people I can bring on the show, and then also obviously all the writing and all the podcasting. So that is a lot of what my day-to-day looks like. But I got some more questions closing out this part 2 of the Fan Take Friday. I got a lot of 2026 draft stuff. What players could the Nets potentially be prioritizing? What trades could they be looking at? We'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Guys, go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome to the 5-hour energy flavor draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. Guys, 5-hour energy has a wide variety of flavors. They've got something for everyone. Some of my favorite flavors, Tropical Burst. It's tasty. It's got a fruity flow that gives off island vibes. Sour apple, crisp, tangy taste, delicious tart, just so good. There are other flavors that are definitely sleepers: confetti craze, fruity rainbow, cotton candy, whatever you like. They've got an option, and most of them are great. So find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less time, less stress, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, part 2 of this Fan Take Friday. Rolling on through all your takes and questions, 2026 draft stuff. Next one now. Knowing the Nets organization as well as you do, if the Nets have the third pick and Darren Peterson is still on the board, do you think they'd opt for ceiling/talent and take him regardless, or go for Caleb Wilson based off what Mark/Jordy seem to prioritize? That's from Joe Martin. And look, the Darren Peterson thing, it's tough to answer because there's obviously so many questions, so much speculation about his medicals, about some of the things that are going on behind the scenes at Kansas right now, which I don't have the best grasp on because, I'm covering the Nets right now. I'm not a draft guy, and I think that we'll get more information about that. But a lot of with Darren Peterson, a lot of it's going to come down to the medicals that teams get around the combine and how those check out. But if you're asking me right now, if the Nets have the third pick and they have an option between Darren Peterson and Caleb Wilson, if the medicals are okay, I think you have to take Darren Peterson. I mean, I understand the concerns. I've spoken recent pods, and I spoke in part one of my Fan Take Friday this week about the Nets' need for stability. Their need to have guys who come in who can be kind of stabilizing forces. And I know that there are the questions about Darren Peterson, his want to, sitting out the game, some of that stuff. But from draft people that I have listened to and gotten to talk to, they say that he's a maniacal worker. They say a lot of that stuff seems like it's overblown. So we'll see. And just the level of talent he is. I mean, even with him not physically looking like himself this season, he's still been very productive. And his tape at Prolific Prep last season, the dude was a monster. And he's a one-of-one type talent. I feel confident in saying that if he is healthy, I think he's the most talented player in the draft. So he's a guy, if the Nets had the third pick, I would definitely, assuming the medicals check out and you have the intel, surrounding him that you're comfortable with, I would definitely think that the Nets would take him. But a lot of that, as I said, I've said in the past, that goes back to scouting. That's what scouting's about. That's why you have the network of all these relationships. That's why you employ all of these people in your front office, is to be able to get that kind of information. So we'll see how much of that information the Nets get and how they come out on it. But next question, if the Nets fall to 5 in the lottery and the big 3 plus Wilson go top 4, what are your thoughts on Nate Ament? IMO, in my opinion, the Nets are too deep at guard to give Kingston/Acuff/any of the other top guards the freedom/usage their play style requires. That's from Bullshit Bandit. Great Twitter handle there. I would say Nate Ament, I've seen him play a little bit. I think that he's played a lot better in conference play. I see the desire, or I see the appeal with him. He's a 6'9", 6'10" guy, ridiculous shot maker, has shown better on-ball capabilities, better passing ability. I would say, would I be as high on him as some of the guard prospects that the Nets could have available to them? No. And this idea, I've spoken about this ever since I had Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings on the show, and he said the Nets would be interested in Kingston Flemings, and that's a guy he's heard the Nets are interested in. The idea that the Nets have all these guards, they can't draft another guard. It's just not true. It's not true. You look at it the Nets drafted Yegor Djoman. It's been this narrative. The Nets drafted 4 point guards. It's not true, first of all. Yegor's not a point guard, in my opinion. They drafted 2 point guards. Yegor's not a point guard. Drake Powell's not a point guard. Danny Wolf's not a point guard. Ben Suraf and Nolan Troy, those guys are point guards. Ben Suraf certainly isn't precluding you from anything with, how he's looked during his rookie season. I think there still could be hope for him, but he's not precluding you with what you do with a top 5 pick in this coming draft. And then Nolan Troy, sure, he's looked encouraging, but if you have a guy that you're extremely high on in this top 5, like a Kingston Flemings or a Michael Brown or a Darius Acuff, and that's the guy that you have available at number 5, and you think he's the best player available, I don't think that Nolan Troy is right now the level of prospect that is going to preclude you from going after that guy. So, Nate Ament, I think that he could be an option. I don't hate, the idea of him, but I would say that some of these other guard prospects look really promising, and I don't think that you can't look at those guys if the Nets were to fall to the 5th pick. Last question, closing this out. Do you think the Nets will trade for the 12th or 13th pick? 12th pick, Oklahoma City, 13th pick, San Antonio in this year's draft. Rockets and Knicks pick will be in 20s range next year, plus Thunder and Spurs don't need more young players next season, rather more assets in future years. That's from Babyfaced Assassin. And, look, it's going to depend on the evaluation of some of the players in that in those ranges. I would say that teams don't trade lottery picks very, willy-nilly. I think we saw that last year. Look at it the New Orleans Pelicans moved up from 20 or 22 or something like that to 21, I think it was, to 13 or 12 to take Derek Queen. They gave up their unprotected first round pick in this year's draft. Now you'll say that's a dumb trade, and I agree, but it informs, how high the price is to get these lottery picks, especially in a draft this year that is regarded as even deeper in terms of lottery talent than last year. So I think that it'll be difficult for the Nets to trade back into the lottery. Do I think it's impossible? No, but the idea that like Thunder and Spurs don't need more young players next season, that's not true. Every team needs young players because the way that the new CBA is structured, you need cost-controlled players on rookie deals. And you're seeing that, with the Thunder, with the Spurs, you're going to see that. Like, they're going to have to pay a lot of players. Those teams are going to have to pay a lot of guys, and they're not going to be able to keep all of the veteran depth that they have right now. And the way that you replace that veteran depth is through cost-controlled rookie contracts, guys you get through the draft. So if the Nets are trying to trade for, say, the 12th or the 13th pick with those two teams, I definitely think it could be possible. But they have, the 2027 and 2028 drafts aren't regarded that highly. They do have that 2032 Nuggets pick. Like, they do have assets. They have other players. So we'll see. It depends ultimately on, how high OKC and San Antonio's evaluation is of the players in that range, and also the Nets' evaluation of the players in that range. Do they value that potentially over some of the long-term assets that they have that maybe, could be valuable down the line? Are you willing to give that up to get some of those picks and get a second lottery pick? So we'll see. We'll have more talk about that as we get closer to the draft. That's all I got for you guys on part 2 of this Fan Take Friday. Thank you all for submitting questions. Jam-packed mailbag these last few weeks. I really enjoyed doing it, so appreciate you all for the interaction. But if you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. The Nets got the Detroit Pistons Saturday night. They got a day off on Sunday, and they'll be back in action on Monday against the Memphis Grizzlies. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.